Okay. I apologize in advance if my voice is a little hoarse. Still fighting a cold, so hopefully you can still hear me. Our next step after kind of formatting our data table and making it look all nice, getting everything centered, top aligned if we need to, getting the correct number of sig figs on our data. Here we went to one decimal place. Oops, let's fix that one. Come back there. And then obviously as we multiply numbers, we tend to want to have 3 sig figs for our densities. So we have some data for our N1 blocks. Obviously I've just kind of made it up. It's not accurate, but it might be something that you'll see and run into as you work on making your graphs. So we're going to go ahead and make a scatter plot of this data. Most of the analysis we do in physics is designed to show correlation. So as one thing changes or increases one variable, the other variable follows suit. So that usually means we want a scatter plot. We don't really want to make that a line graph or a bar graph or a pie chart, things like that. And then from there, we can kind of work through some of the other details. So my recommendation is this. If we have our mouse highlight any square on or near our data, the software, when we go to make a graph, is going to automatically make assumptions about what you want to graph and how you want to graph. And that could be messy because very rarely do we put the information on there in the way that the software program understands. And so we end up graphing something that isn't what we want. We mix up the variables, flip our Y and our X axis, all that kind of stuff, and it's not pretty. So my recommendation is start our graph and make it from scratch. And we do that by clicking on a cell that's away. We don't want to click on a cell that's near our data. What that allows us to do is start with the blank slate, and then we can tell it what data we want to put in. So we can either do that by coming up here to this hotkey. It says Insert Chart, or we can go to Insert and then down to Chart. Either one is going to make that happen for us. So let's go here, Insert Chart, maybe. There we go. That pops up. Okay, so let me see if I can move this up out of the way here. So we have our chart, and we can slide this kind of down or out over here where we can see. Now we are looking to graph the mass as it relates to volume. So the first thing I want to do is go down to my chart type, and I want to scroll down until I find, a scatter plot. That's what I'm looking for, okay? So there's our scatter plot. The next thing I want to do is tell it what to graph. So it says down here, add x-axis. That's referring to the data, the information or numbers we want to put in there. If I click on that, it says select a data range. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to pick the values I want on my x-axis, right? And that would be, let's see, I'm graphing mass on the y-axis, so my volume is going to be on the x-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag over these 3 volumes. And you can see as we do that, it says, okay, you're pulling information from sheet 1 and you want G4 through G6. That looks good. Hit OK. And we got that data on the graph. All right. Now we need to add the y-axis. So we come down here to where it says add series. I don't know why I wouldn't just say y-axis, but it says add series. So we'll click on the add series button, and now that's our permission to add the data on our y-axis. And so we can drag over those 3, hit OK, and hopefully, let's drag this over maybe, if it'll let me. There we go. We get a graph. All right, I have 1 point, 2 points, and 3 points. Now, obviously, not the best when you just have 3 points. It'd be nice to have more than 3 points, but we're going to make do with what we have. Now, if I scroll down, I don't think there's anything else there I need to mess around with. I can come over to the customization setting. One thing I want to do for sure is we want to get ourselves a nice title. So we come to Chart Title and Axes. We can come down here to Title Text, click on that box, and we want to name our graph. We want it to be something specific. We want it to tell us what our graph is showing us. And I'm basically showing the what? Mass versus volume of wood what, M? Would type M. Okay, so I can put that in there. That looks good. I can do weird things like make it bold, make it small. I could even center it, stuff like that, depending on what I want to do. I get to kind of mess around with some of that kind of stuff if I want to. Now, I also need to label my X and my Y axis. So I can come over here and label the horizontal axis. That's going to be my volume in centimeters cubed. Remember, we always have to put the units when we label our axes. So we put that there. I can come up here and say vertical axis. That is going to be my mass in grams. That looks good as well. And my graph actually looks pretty good, okay? I don't know if there's any other crazy stuff I'd want to customize as far as that goes. Okay? Looks great. So the next thing I did now is I want to do a little bit of analysis with this. And it's nice that I have these points, but I want to see or showcase any trend that these points follow. So if I click on a point, it brings me up some different, takes me to a different category, basically down to the series category. All right. And if I scroll down here, I get to a point where it allows me to do what's called a trend line. If I click on that box, it'll actually give me a line of best fit that goes through or really close to those points. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm saying there's error in every one of these points, but I can kind of average out that error and come up with a line that sort of fits that. So we can kind of do things like change what type that is. In some cases, maybe we don't want a linear. We want something to be polynomial or exponential or logarithmic. Most of the relationships we'll work with are going to be linear relationships. So we want to get used to that one. And I think mathematically, I want to come down here to label, and I want to go with the use equation option. And what that's going to do is that's going to give me a y equals mx plus b version of the equation of that line. And look at that. It tells me that my equation is 0.391x plus 0.39 or negative 0.393, which is wonderful. I really love that. And I think I have the ability, maybe I don't. That's just there. I wonder if I can edit that at all. Let's see. You know, in Excel, you can then go and kind of change how that looks. But in this case, I don't know if they're going to let me do any editing of that chart area, chart style. I don't think I can get in there and type anything in that box, which is unfortunate. Oops. I accidentally deleted my graph. Good thing we have this edit undo button, and that'll come back. But if I'm going to do that, I do want that to have value. And so when I look at this, when I look at the slope of this line, what does that slope tell me? Well, there's a pretty solid similarity between the slope, which is 0.391, and if I come over here, the densities that my would have. And so I think that kind of makes sense, right? That the slope of this line sort of represents the average of the densities of that type of wood. And regardless of whether or not your volume increases, your mass should increase in the same way. That's one of the kind of properties of density. It's not going to change with the amount. And we show that on our graph. And so when I copy and paste this into my Google Docs and start to present this, something I would really consider doing is either right above or probably preferably right below, but a little explanation of, hey, you know, we graph these points, mass versus volume, and we noticed that the slope of our trend line for these points actually matched the density or average density of our objects. And so we're not just presenting the information in graphical form, we're actually explaining what information we're finding or what we're showing from that. So that's kind of really what we need to do as far as that goes. So I'm sure there are other little things you can tweak to make it look good or look bad. Obviously, we want to keep with lighter colors, with like darker lines. It'll print out easier. We don't want to change things to like purple and pink and stuff like that. That's hard to print out. But other than that, I think we're in good shape. So that should be all for this tutorial.